welcome to the Hustle and Flow podcast. I'm Shaun the Hustle.
I'm Les the Flow.
Let's go. Your turn this week, Les, to choose the topic.
Yes. To be honest, I tried to avoid choosing this topic, but I think I will keep true to selecting things that are front of mind. And to give context, it is mid-March at the moment, mid-March 2020, and the topic on everyone's lips and being broadcast around the world is surrounding the uncertainty and the unprecedented times that we face around the coronavirus and all that sort of thing. I don't want to focus too much on the virus itself or what it means, but I want to talk about it from a different angle, perhaps from the angle of responsibility and opportunity. When I look at this situation, I'm reminded of a quote from George Santayana, who says, "Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it." And I think that this situation or this circumstance is an opportunity for us to look at it from that lens. That's okay. What sort of I wanted to talk about.
Cool.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Or everything surrounding it, really?
Oh, look, I just think it's an unsettled time for a lot of people. And like everything, it's all a matter of perspective. The perspective that you take on certain things determine how you view them, how you operate, what you're going to be like, what you think is happening, how you feel about it. So just keeping in mind that fear is a massive, it affects people in lots of different ways.
Yep.
And I guess that's like the undertone of everything right now. Like, people are afraid.
Yep.
And how you look at fear and how, I guess, if you're able to sit on top of things and look at them from a kind of a bird's eye view, or pull yourself back out of the situation that you're currently in. Like, we're in Sydney, Australia. There's been reports all over the world about Australians going nuts over toilet paper and hoarding groceries, and people actually getting into fights over toilet paper.
Yep.
And as funny as that may be to people and ridiculous, the fact is people are actually getting into altercations over toilet paper. People are removing groceries off the shelves to the point that people that may need them can't get them. Just recently, one of the largest retailer chains here in Australia has decided to open an hour earlier and just let senior card holders, so the elderly, have a shot at coming into the store, and that hour is dedicated to them alone, which means they haven't been able to get stuff before this.
Well, I think there's been people who have been snatching, toilet paper and things like that from the elderly and disabled.
That's just like disgraceful, man. Yeah. If you're like actually doing that, like, shame on you, regardless of what your values are. But yeah, it's just like this. I wouldn't say it's crazy. It's not like crazy times, but it's just weird times. Like, I think a lot of people are like, it's crazy times. It's not that crazy, dude. Like, people are still out. Before this, I was, in the CBD, had to come back. There's still people out. There's people doing things. There's people in cafes. People are going about their daily lives. But there is actually a large portion of the population who are working from home. Their companies that they work at have told them to go work from home. Companies are trying to work that out right now, see if they can do it. They're testing it. We're not in any type of quarantine at the moment. There's like mandatory quarantine for people that have arrived from overseas. But in terms of isolation and stuff, it's encouraged. It's being encouraged right now, but it's not a requirement.
And I think that's an important point to sort of sit on and talk about a little bit more, right? We're not currently in a state of forced or mandated quarantine, but it is encouraged. But if we follow suit and look at again, a very close history just of many of the Asian countries like China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, things like that. They're now starting to recover from, I guess, the hysteria surrounding everything, and they feel like they've got the situation under control. But they mandated quarantine quite heavily for, I think it was even since January or something, for some of these countries.
Yeah.
So if we look back, I think that we can safely say, or we can predict that it's probably coming for us, and it's likely going to happen for a lot of countries that haven't already done it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, again, in terms of like this subjective view of whether it seems crazy or not, it plays down, I think, to, like you said at the very start, like perspective and how you see it. Because whether you subscribe to the fear that is being spread through all the media reports and how these reports are being circulated through social media and various media outlets, it is going to seem potentially crazy to you. And that's why people are acting, in irrational ways. Like, if you just stop to think about what you were doing with hoarding toilet paper, if you aren't allowed to leave the house, it's not going to save you from dying. You just can't wipe your ass. Do you know what I mean?
You can wash it with water.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these references out there played out in a comedic way, but it's true. Is that the Filipino people, they have this thing called a tabo, which is just a cup or like a little tub that they use to wash their ass. But it's true, right? You don't need toilet paper, right? So why are people getting into altercations about it? So that's what I'm saying in terms of whether it's seen as crazy or not. It's that matter of perspective and how you consume and ascribe to that fear that is being pushed around, right?
Yeah.
And that is being created by all these reports and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is as well, like, regardless of what you might think of a situation or what's going on, there are real flow-on effects.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, like, if you go to a supermarket right now, like all the ones in my local area, you actually can't buy rice, you can't buy pasta, you haven't been able to buy toilet paper for quite a while unless you are there at, like, the moment it gets delivered. So, regardless of what you may think, if you want toilet paper on a certain day and you run out of your house, you actually can't buy it.
Yeah.
So, like, regardless of what you think, there's real flow-on effects. There's things that are happening in reality, regardless of your perspective of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing to note, which is what everybody is being told or what you ascribe to listening to, and what you hear and what you do based on that has a real flow-on effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I also think that even the people who have any sort of opinion, whether it's an opinion of these types of people and, throwing judgment of them and making fun of them and creating memes and all that sort of stuff, right? That is still bringing attention to the problem, and that is indirectly exacerbating what is already there.
Yeah.
So even if you, by doing that, are not supporting what is happening and seeing the silliness in it, it is still bringing attention to it, right? And it's still furthering the same cause, whether you are doing it or not, whether you feel like that is your intention or not. Right?
Yeah, I guess it's like you're putting some fuel to the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, you might not think you are, but you are.
Yeah, 100%.
In a lot of cases. And look, man, like, for me, this isn't a right or wrong sort of thing, like what we're talking about right now. Like, I'm not saying that if you want 100 rolls of toilet paper, you shouldn't have it. You might really like wiping your ass in luxury. But, and you do what you want to do. But as I always say, like, when we talk to each other and we talk about things like at large, right? It's like, it's cool, do what you want to do, as long as you're not hurting other people.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one thing that really needs to be considered here, is like our sense of responsibility as humans right now.
Yeah.
And you know, I feel like this time at the moment is starting to uncover a lot of how people really are, as in like how individuals really are.
Totally.
Right? Like, I'm looking around, I'm like, dude, if you're someone who's willing to actually punch on with someone for toilet paper, like, it tells me a lot about you. If you are one of those like scumbuckets who's taking something that was in the hand of an elderly person, if that's happening, or, you know, you see that they're going to get something and you charge to the shelf before them to get it, like, that's telling me a lot about you. So that's one interesting thing of this time that I'm noticing and I'm paying real close attention to, is like how people are reacting to things, how people are acting right now, and just in the conversations you have with people, like,
Totally.
You can see what's important to people and what's not.
Totally.
And it's uncovering a lot of, like, it's ripping away a lot of the surface,
Yeah.
and the decorum that people have on top of essentially what they really are and what they really like.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird that it takes something like this. Yeah, how people are responding.
Totally.
And reacting.
Reacting, sorry.
Right.
More,
This is
more
like,
so reaction.
yeah,
than
this is one of those like prime time examples of like reacting versus responding.
Yeah, totally.
Because if you did just take a moment, right? The toilet paper thing, we keep coming back to it, but it's like the easiest example is like, man, if you run out, it's fine, man. Just wash your ass with water. Take a shower, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Now, look, did I go out and get toilet paper? Yes, I did. Because I like wiping my ass with toilet paper.
Yeah.
But it would not be the end of the world for me if I didn't have it. Right?
Exactly.
So, like, my point on that, though, is that other people are acting like they will die if they don't have it. Like, when you're getting into an altercation with someone over that, like, you've got some fear response happening and you're reacting. Because if you stop to think about it, you'd be like, wait a minute, why the fuck am I about to punch on with someone over ass paper?
Yeah.
Like, stupid.
Yeah.
Anyone who has rational thought would agree. So that's the sort of thing, I think, if people took the time to understand, like, why am I so scared? Like, why am I reacting like this?
Yeah.
Responses would be a lot different. Actions would be a lot different. And we might be in a different spot right now.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side as well, I see other people just being real flippant. Right? Like the whole mask thing. They're like, don't wear a mask, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, totally.
Like, yeah, it might not. But, like, just sheer common sense. Like, how do you think shit like this spreads? Like, if someone coughs or sneezes and you're wearing a mask versus not wearing a mask, I think it's probably going to help you.
Yeah,
it's going to stop transference or something. Like, it's going to do something. But to be like, oh, don't wear a mask. Like, I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm just saying, right? Like, the response of that and people being like, you don't even need to wear a mask. I feel like it's some kind of weird defense mechanism of, like, trying to ward off it happening through your sheer hopes.
Yeah.
It's like...
It's a level of ignorance to it, or hoping that it will just blow over, you know?
Yeah, and it's also, there's so many contradictory things going on right now, like contrary advice going on, which is like, don't wear a mask, right? It doesn't do anything. Then, like, don't touch your face and your mouth. It's like, if you're wearing a mask, even if you put your hand there, you wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
So doesn't that seem like maybe it might be a good idea for you if you're going to do that? Just shit like that. It's like, one person says one thing, one person says another thing, and I'm like, but why? Like, why would you say that? Why are you trying to dissuade people from doing something that could potentially help them if you just thought about it for a minute? You know what I mean? So, and I think a lot of that as well is, like, you don't hope it will happen, and you think that if you're like, nah, that'll never happen. It's this very much like for Aussies, like for us, it's like this she'll be right attitude.
Yeah.
And sometimes she may not be right.
Yeah.
And you need to think about that, man.
Yeah.
Because, like, this sort of situation, if people do start to get sick and you've got, like, elderly family members, you live with someone with a weak immune system, like, it's going to affect them.
Yeah.
There's an actual real effect to that. And you just being like, nah, she'll be right, might not be the best course of action for you right now.
Yeah. And, like, I think that's probably a very important point that we should delve a little bit further down. And to me, what I got from that is, firstly, we'll talk about responsibility in these times as individuals, right? But there's also this middle ground that we must sort of tread. like with responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not a case of we must overreact and panic without knowing what exactly is going on and being irrational about all our actions and thoughts and our behaviors.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we shouldn't be so naive and so ignorant to simply, bury our heads in the sand and wait for it to simply blow over. You know? So there's that middle ground of responsibility that we each have. And, this is the sort of thing that I was mentioning before in terms of this notion of not needing to, or not being forced or mandated to self-quarantine at the moment. Though it would make sense, it's prudent for us each to limit the interactions that we have with people as much as possible. If it's not necessary, we just shouldn't do it, right? Because it's not just for ourselves, right? We think about ourselves, sure, it's very commonsensical that we just say, look, we limit the exposure to everyone else, then we lessen our own chance. Though we have to, again, think about the flow and effects. We come in contact with people who have come in contact with people who have come in contact with people. We just don't know the spread or the range of interactions and contact that has been had across the people that we, come in close contact with.
Yeah.
And if we're coming into contact with different people every day, who again have come in contact with different people every day, it's just making it worse, or it's just increasing the risk, really, isn't it?
That's what it is. It's not necessarily making it worse, but it's definitely increasing risk.
Increasing the risk.
Right.
That's the best way to put it, I think. And that's, as individuals, that's what we can think about doing. It is going to be an inconvenience, of course, for us to need to just stay at home, right? There's many layers to inconvenience of that. But again, what is the other alternative here? Critical times require radical action. Yeah. And I think that's just the view that people need to take right now, But I guess there's also this, with what you just said, critical times require radical changes. I think that's what you said. But it's not a lot of people don't think it's critical. Right? So, and that part in itself, to me, I'm responsibility is one thing, consideration is another. Totally.
How considerate you are.
Yeah.
Right? I am the first person to tell anyone to do whatever the fuck you want to do. But always with the caveat of, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. Right? Fact is, no one actually knows what's going on right now. That's Otherwise, right. We'd be sorted. We'd have the answers. Things would be fine. But they're not. Right? If there is a chance that you could catch this sort of virus, not know about it, transmit it to someone else who could actually be really harmed by it, because people are more people die of the flu and more people die from suicide and stuff. I'm yeah, but they're just other issues.
Yeah.
Just because this one may potentially be less of an issue does not mean it's not an issue. And
it doesn't mean that we shouldn't address it. Because
correct.
It is in front of us, right?
I feel that sort of argument of there's things that are way worse. Yeah, there are, until you're the person with an elderly grandparent who might catch it and dies. Or you've got a brother or a sister that has some type of immune condition and they catch it and they die.
Yeah.
Then it's an issue for you, right? But until then, it's not so much. But the fact is, like you were saying, you come into contact with people that come into contact with people that come into contact with people, and you don't know what the fuck's going on, right, man? What's in who and what's been blown out, caught, contracted, whatever, right? So you have to have some type of consideration for people outside of you, because your actions may hurt someone.
That's right.
Right? So you do what you want to do. That's fine. But it's a different set of rules when it comes to things like this, which is this may hurt someone else. So you need to be considerate, man. That's all I'm saying. Be considerate.
I think that's key. I mean, this can no longer be taken as something so trivial, right? We've seen across the globe now that it has widespread ramifications. This isn't an issue of just, our immediate environment. It's not an issue of just our country or one nation. It's an issue of humanity right now, right? So we got to step the fuck back and just really consider that, and just look above ourselves and our own self-interests.
Yeah.
You know, and have that consideration, like you said.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just like we don't know everything, and that's where we're at the moment. Though what we do know is that it could spread through close contact.
Yeah.
So we have to use what we know to do the best that we can
Yeah.
in the current situation.
That's the key, bro. That's the difference. It's like doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there's just this air of like over caution. Like I get that as well, right? Like I'm someone who likes to dot I's and cross T's. But still, like, you see some people going like overboard with shit. Like there's practicalities and realities to life you still need to maintain.
And that's that balance again, right?
But
like
then,
we're not saying you have to go walk around with some like, you know, hazmat suit or anything like that. Just be fucking practical.
Yeah. But with that as well, it's like where I think it does not hurt you to exercise an extra level of caution is how you may affect other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because it's not just about you.
Yeah. And that's
right?
key. That's very key.
Yeah. It's not, and that's the thing. It may not affect just you. If it was up to you, if it was something where like, it's just like you get it and that's done and it was through your own choice and you can't pass it on, do whatever you want, man.
Yeah.
Like, I've got no advice for you because you can do whatever you want. It's not going to affect anyone else. But if it has the potential to actually harm other people, that's a whole different story, man.
Yeah.
You got to look at it from a different lens.
For sure. Yeah. So I guess that's the point of view from being responsible in the situation like this. And again, like you said, I think it's very important that we recognize the gravity of the situation or the potential ramifications.
Yeah.
To humanity, right? To people around us, and you know, spreading across the entire planet, really, right? Because it's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
So responsibility is taken differently, like you said, and it's a great example. And it's a great way to put it. If there is potential for negatively impacting someone else, then you really have to consider it from that lens, from a different lens, right?
Yeah, you do.
So I think that's very important. I think a lot of people, like you said, the examples that we've raised before were very short-sighted, very irrational, very reactionary. But I think the responsibility for each person is now transcending any semblance of, you know, status or, you know, self benefit or anything like that. You know, it is much farther reaching, and it's the same for every single person on the planet. You know, there is a level of solidarity required, and a united view about what this potentially could be, I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it really matters like how much money you got, what you do, what you like, what you don't.
Exactly.
Like in this sort of situation,
exactly.
Right? And it's kind of funny that it takes shit like this to make people understand, like, or kind of humble themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Like, and that's the best segue ever. The best segue ever, because we're talking, like, you know, from responsibility, right? We talk about opportunity. And going back to that quote I mentioned right at the start, right?
Yeah.
Those who are unable to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Right?
Yeah.
So think about that in terms of why it takes situations like this for people to open their eyes, you know, and what that might mean.
What do you think that means?
Well, look, for me, I have a very I don't even know if it's esoteric or mystical or anything like that. You can take it however you like, right? But I always believe that there must always return a level of or a state of homeostasis, you know, in everything in life. And in the universe as well, right? And I take this and I'll apply this on an individual level as an example, so that you can, relate better. So think about the lessons that you're taught throughout your life, not necessarily from people, but them as well, but through any situation. You are taught various lessons along the way on this journey of life, and it is up to us to be aware enough to see them, and then proactive enough to adhere to them, take them on board, adapt, evolve, change as you need to, and then keep going forward until we learn the next lesson. But if you are not aware enough, or you ignore the lessons or whatever, then they'll come back in a different way. We're always going to have to learn them, though, to come back to a level of homeostasis, to balance, to harmony, right? And again, I always use this example for myself, and I truly believe this, is that when I was diagnosed with cancer, I feel like that had a lot to do with my ignoring of many cues that I had about who I was and who I was pretending to be. And I was ignoring a lot of those things. For many, many years of my life, I felt it, I knew it. I was doing things that I didn't feel like were directed from the heart,
Mm-hmm.
And they came up in different ways, had little mini bouts of depression and being unhappy and all that sort of thing. And you still ignore them because, you go to the doctor and get those antidepressants and all that sort of thing. And then it comes in a different form later on, and it came out in a very shocking way as cancer, and that's the lesson that I chose to take. Yeah. And I always reflect back and say, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. I wouldn't have been courageous enough as the person I was pre-cancer.
Yeah.
And that's why I ignored everything up until that point. So again, that is a micro level, but if you expand that out on a macro level, I feel like if we just reflect on society as a whole and what direction we've been moving towards, maybe we might feel that we've been a little bit misguided, for quite some time and lost our way, The focus is no longer on the well-being or welfare of the people. It's more about economic growth and, new stimulus to the people. It's about control, all that sort of stuff, I
think there's a lot out there as well, because one thing that's interesting to me, which I just realized while you were explaining that, is like, this is the one thing that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
That's on top of everyone's mind at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas usually we're all divided.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's still division. There's people who, are super scared, think a certain way. There's people that are just being like really blasé and being ignorant to certain things, right? But I don't, like, no one can argue that there's not like some level of fear, like collective fear and uncertainty.
Yeah, for
right?
sure, 100%.
It's like weird. It's the one thing that's actually brought everyone together into focus on something.
And that should really tell us something.
Yeah.
That really should tell us something,
Because it's not like, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight or black or white or anything in between, anything, right? Like, this is one thing that can affect everyone as a human, that everybody's wondering about and no one actually knows much about, right? And it's interesting, like, to see, like, it's not something that you can really divide that hard on.
No.
Right? Like, there's not people yelling stuff from the rooftops that, people are taking aside and like, yeah, that's right. No, this is right. And it's kind of like, what elements of this make it so, and it makes me think about, like, what are the things that really matter? Because this is something that's going to affect everyone, and you're not having that kind of divisiveness. Like, people are going to have to come together at some point, right?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
And it kind of puts into focus for me, like, So then is all that other shit kind of just pointless that you're arguing about?
Well, think about this. I was thinking about this, and I wrote about this recently, and I want to get your take on it. Like, I hear people, arguing and still trying to work ways around keeping their multi-million-dollar businesses running, and what the ramifications might be if they didn't have certain staff on the floor or certain functions in their business operating because for X amount of time, right? If there was a mandated quarantine. So say, for example, for the Asian countries, I think they mandated quarantines of a month or so, or even more. And many businesses ground to a halt, right?
Yeah.
And all those sorts of conversations were about continuity of business and economic stability and keeping the head up above water, ensuring the big machine keeps rolling on, right? But then it comes down to the priority is between continuity of the economic machine or the welfare of humanity.
This on that though, I feel there's other things that tie into that.
Absolutely there are.
Right, because
I'm looking from a very high level view.
Certain machines need to keep rolling for certain people to be able to keep rolling, right? So I understand that element of it as well, and that's like where the balance comes in.
Yeah, of course. And look, at the end of the day, right, whatever it is, like, I understand that people's livelihoods are affected and all that sort of thing, and I get it. But at the end of the day, what is the alternative? There is a balance to be struck, of course. But what is short-term pain in comparison or versus long-term ramifications of this spreading to an uncontrollable state,
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things like, one, the short-term pain for different people is very different.
Yeah.
What is short-term pain for some is actually going to be real long-term pain for others. So that's something that we need to consider. Like me personally, I know people who already know that within like 4 to 6 weeks time, they're not going to have a business because their business relies on people coming in for certain services or people using certain spaces which they control, right? And they're not going to be getting rents. They're not going to be able to pay their bills out. They've got costs that are still mounting or costs that they've incurred. They're not going to have revenue coming in. They're not going to be able to pay things. They're going to lose shit.
Yep.
They're not going to be able to run businesses.
Yep.
And that's how they make money. It's how they survive. And if they don't have like a certain buffer in place, regardless of what you think someone should do, like with their finances and be astute about it or not, like it's going to be very long-term pain for them. Like they're going to lose their business. They're not going to have a way to make money. And you don't just build a business overnight.
Yep.
That's the reality of it.
Of
So
course.
like that. Whereas if you work in a corporate job and you have to stay home, a lot of times you're going to keep getting paid. Right. So that's why I say like the short-term pain for some is actually going to be a long-term pain.
But that's a great example to highlight the difference, right?
Yeah.
Of responsibility, but also of who and where should be taking responsibility. Like what I want to say is I'm not discounting anything that you just said at all, but worst case on either side of this discussion, like one side is we won't be here. Our mortality is in question, right?
That's if you take the view that like could be deadly for everyone.
Yeah, but I'm talking worst case, right? We have to take worst case from either side, or from each polarity to talk about what is the worst case on one end to the other, right? And if we're talking about the annihilation of a large size of the population of Earth, versus, I get it, it's not going to be an easy situation either way, but we'll always find a way, whatever situation, you're always going to find a way. Like even in the worst case scenario, someone loses their business and are unable to support their families, things like that. You're going to find a way, you know. But on the other end of the spectrum, people are fucking dying, you know.
Yeah. But I guess my only point on that is like, that's when the difference of operation comes into play.
Yeah, for sure.
Again,
of course.
I don't have the answer. I don't know whether like one mode of action is better than another or not. But you have to do what's right for you in the moment.
That's for sure.
You have to do what's right for you. But again, that doesn't harm other people. And that's where this whole situation is very interesting, right? Because there's also people who are like charging $70 to $100 for a bottle of hand sanitizer, like just gouging people. Like that's another shitbag move. Like if you're trying to make money off people's fears, like scummy thing to do, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's that going on as well. But then, you know, on the flip of that, there's people who are like, shit, I'm not going to be making money, or it's likely I'm not going to, so I need to promote my product right now, or I need to my services. I've got to try and get through the door. And like it becomes like muddy territory, because people are then like, oh, are you just trying to line your pockets right now? Where it's like, that's not the case. Like people have bills they need to pay, man, and they've got staff they need to pay, and they've got costs, and they need to be able to cover those, and being able to actually promote and sell things. And then people are also getting scared. They're going to contract, man. It's what people do when they get scared. So it's just very interesting. You need to look at your own personal situation. I think look at who's around you, and then very carefully consider how your actions are going to affect the wider environment around you, because you're going to. Unless you're sitting in a cave by yourself, you're going to. And I think that's the main thing for me right now, is like how the things that you are doing or that I'm doing, how are they going to affect other people? You need to be mindful of that, because it's not just about you.
And like we have to keep in mind, and like you said, this approach, like anything, you can't look at it and paint every situation with a broad stroke, right? We have to look at what is immediately in front of each of us and apply the adequate approach that suits us and our
especially when you don't know how things are actually going to turn out. Right? You can have, but there are, on the flip side of that, certain things that you do know will happen.
That's right.
Like if everybody descends into chaos, people are going to get hurt. That's a fact. History's shown you that time and time again, right? When riots happen and people get hurt and things like that. When society descends into chaos because people get scared or they don't want something to happen, right? So you got to look at that and be like, is that the path that people are heading down? Like, is that where things are going? Right?
We get a glimpse of that for sure, you know? Through people's behaviors.
And I think this whole situation aside, like as in the current thing and what people should do about that, just looking at this as a lesson, it's like maybe it's a good idea for people to think about how their actions affect others.
Yeah, totally. 100%. And like, just to come back to the point about, and I think this sort of talks about leadership a little bit of our people, leadership in general, right? Leadership of humanity. And like you said, leadership should recognize that these sorts of situations are going to happen, right? In times like this, like we're talking, you know, loss of business and all that sort of stuff, and people are going to struggle. And I want to use an example, like there's many people, like celebrities and athletes and stuff like that, they're pledging their money to help support people who are going to be out of work for a prolonged period. So for example, the NBA, the National Basketball Association in America, they've shut down all their suspended games indefinitely. And what that means to the people who work at the various stadiums, they don't have a job until they start up again. And a lot of people, they rely on that salary as their, you know, their only income. It's their livelihood. So people like team owners who are private owners, athletes, they are pledging their own money to support these people through this tough time, which is great, right? A great show of solidarity.
Yeah.
But is it really their responsibility? Isn't it up to the leaders of our nations and our people to recognize this and, you know, prioritize that as well? Do you know what I mean? Like, it is up to leadership to understand what is going to happen as a result of this and support the people. Just like the example you put in terms of corporate workers who will continue to be paid. That's a great example of it, right? That is upper or a higher level leadership or a leadership decision to say that, you know, we need to keep people paid because they rely on the salary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that needs to apply much more widely than that, right?
Well, I think, like, in terms of the leadership of a nation, like, various countries have announced stimulus, whether it's well spent, well divvied is another argument, but that's again going to be subjective. Of
course.
But in terms of your question of should they be doing more, I think like there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm not like a political person per se, right?
Of course. We need to, premise the conversation and say that we're both not in it.
So I guess I'm not the best person to talk about that, so I don't really have too much of an opinion on that.
Yeah.
But what I will say to that is, you know, with the people like those team owners you're talking about and athletes and stuff that are pledging their own money, I think that speaks to a wider view of doing what you can do for the people around you. And I think that's important. I think you should do what you can, right? And what you're comfortable with doing. And I think that's one cool thing that comes out of situations like this is, like, you do see the good side of humanity from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of doom and gloom. And, like, I didn't know that team owners were paying, pledging their funds towards this. Yeah. Like, I haven't heard anything about that, but I've heard the same, like, fear-mongering shit a ton from different sources, right? And I think maybe that's another thing that we need to do as people, just ongoing, like, is just share the positivity of the things that people are doing and take that as a cue to do what you can do for other people.
Sure.
I think that's getting missed a lot. You know, like, especially as Aussies, we come together, like, in times like this, usually, right? Excuse me. Like the bushfires that we just had. Like, Australians as a whole raised millions on millions of dollars for people, right? And that's really cool. I think they're the sorts of things that, you know, are good to come out of situations like this, and they're the sort of things we should focus on, as well as working out what the best path is forward. And not just being scared and trying to take care of ourselves, but taking care of other people and doing what we can. I think that's important, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head with saying that it's doing what we can, right? It doesn't matter what position you are in, or how wealthy you are, or how many people you know or don't know, or whatever it is. You do what you can in these situations, right?
Yeah.
And that's voluntary goodwill from people. And that is, again, like you said, a showing of what positivity and what good can come out of humanity in general. But that's not being spoken about. But my point also is that it shouldn't necessarily be the responsibility of the goodwill of people to ensure that, you know, things are put in a good position or
but I kind of think maintained. It is, man. I challenge that. I think it is.
I think to a degree, right? But we have a leadership structure for a reason, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Right? And if they aren't focusing their resources and their attention on the right things at the right time, then I question whether that is good leadership or not. And again, I'm saying this from a place of not knowing fuck all about politics or anything like that, right? But I'm just saying this from a general leadership perspective, right? As a leader, I have led many people in my past life in the corporate world and all that sort of stuff, right? And you can look at what leader means to you as a definition. But again, if you are put in a position to lead, you know, a group of people, right? You have to focus on what is important to this group, for the welfare of this group. That is my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about any other, intentions or any other motives that you might have or did have before this popped up. If things come up, the priorities may have to change.
Yeah.
And that's my only point.
Yeah. And I think that's hard for people who are responsible for large groups to do. There's so many stakeholders per se, right? And things to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
And agendas to be met.
Well, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Again, are those driving the wrong decisions, or are they influencing things one way or another? Is my point.
Yeah.
So again,
something needs to be considered. Yeah.
No knowledge or interest in politics at all, but yeah, I think it needs to be talked about to some degree anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that will come out in the weeks to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Outside of that, let's talk about opportunities. Again, let's delve a little bit deeper into that. Like opportunities from situations like this. And it doesn't need to be specifically about this situation. But I think again, whether we're aware or not of the lessons we're being taught in these times, and I think what it boils down to for me, and you mentioned this before, it's just around reflecting upon human behavior and action generally, where that's at, where it has been at, and does that need to be looked at a little bit and reflected upon and refined and changed and shift, What are your thoughts?
I think times like this kind of put a spotlight on opportunity differently to how it's usually viewed. Also, there's opportunities in everything. That's the truth.
Absolutely.
There's opportunities to learn new things. There's opportunities to improve things. There's opportunities to discard things that, maybe we thought were serving us well that aren't. So I think also depends how you, I think as an individual, as a group, choose to pursue opportunities.
Yeah.
How opportunistic you are. And I think these sorts of times kind of put, if you want, the ethics and morality of your opportunities up for show.
Totally. 100%. 100%. I think that, like I alluded to before, for me, what this has highlighted is that, because I think about everything in general, it sort of works in cycles, right? Just like seasons, and everything's cyclical. There's times of ups, times of downs, but there always has to be this level of homeostasis, this harmony with everything, in nature. And this is almost like the straw that is going to break the camel's back type thing. It has been this accumulation of things, like you mentioned before. There's been many things that have been happening in recent times, the fires, a whole lot of events that have elicited the attention globally. And for me, I think it's time to reflect on who we are as people, how we act, how we behave, and whether that really needs to shift. I think more and more we've gone down this rabbit hole of becoming uber detached from physical life and, walking into this digital realm. And we're distracted, and we don't really understand, or we don't really know where we're going. Because if you ask many people, 9 times out of 10 or even more, right, they're not going to know what they want or where they're going or what they're living for or anything like that. It's always very surface level. And that sort of feeds onto reactive behaviors as well, because people aren't really thinking or attuned with the way they're behaving or acting and how that impacts other people around them. or how their level of awareness to general life impacts everything, you know? So that's what I feel, right? I feel like there is now like a real present reminder for everyone to really reflect upon what it is that life is really about, you know? What are you chasing? Where are you running to? You know?
Yeah. I think it's like also, and what do you want to pursue?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Which is like, yeah, what are you running towards?
Yeah. Because I don't know if you've seen the video. There's this short film that's created by a guy called Steve Cutts, and it's called Happiness. And it's this animated depiction of what modern life looks like. And basically it's 3 minutes long, and it's just a bunch of mice scurrying around, you know, in this modern world, you know, trying to push their way onto trains and then, you know, running the actual rat race. This is like a great depiction of that. And you see when they're sort of running around on this maze of train station and stuff, going up and down escalators, they've got those notice boards that tell you where the next station is. It says train to nowhere. But everyone's fucking running towards this delusion of happiness, but they always wind back in the same place. So running to nowhere, I think, like you said, it's very important for people to understand.
Yeah, I think times like this and what's happening now kind of grinds people to a halt, regardless of where they're running to.
And it's important. It's a great opportunity to actually reflect.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely opportunity in that, for sure. And there's also like opportunities to adapt.
100%.
Right? Like there's that old saying about investment, like, right? Like when there's blood in the streets, that's when the money's there to be made. And when, you know, most people are fearful is when a lot of people can take opportunities to move forward, make a lot of money.
100%.
You know, and not in a quote unquote opportunistic way. Like new things become uncovered that allow people to come up with new solutions to things. Like, man, this whole, with everyone working from home, it's definitely I think it's gonna breed a whole new segment of like interactive technology that is gonna allow people to work from home better.
Yeah. In
professions that traditionally didn't have that capability, or it was just never delved down that path because they didn't have to. Things were working fine, and now you can't do that. So they're gonna have to work out a solution, and from that, they're gonna work out solutions that can be applied in so many different areas. The people that create those systems could make a lot of money. You know, they could come up with solutions that allow work to happen in a completely different way we haven't thought about yet, that produces better work, that produces better solutions, that gives people better quality of living. And it's worth money, and it's worth things that you can't measure too, right? So I think that's going to happen as well. But it gives like this, it's essentially like a pattern interrupt is happening right now.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
It should make people stop and think about shit.
For sure.
And so I think some really cool stuff's going to come out of this too.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the whole point, right? Like you were mentioning, it's sort of the trait of the species that survive is adaptation and evolution, the ability to, right, you know, to shift to the ever-changing environment around them, right?
But also if you think that's a good or bad thing.
Hey, you know, whether or not that's good or bad, right?
Yeah.
You know, the concept of survival is that you are able to, you know, you are able to survive and thrive and adapt and evolve to the ever-changing environment around you.
Yeah.
Good or bad, you know, whatever. But if you don't, then you perish.
Yes.
That's just it. And again, not saying it's good or bad or one way or another. It is what it is, right? But again, that's a point that you can take at the micro level in terms of how you're able to adapt to the situation in front of you, right?
Yeah.
the ever-changing world, because the world is changing at an ever-increasing pace and rapidity than it has before, with the introduction of digital technology.
Yep.
Shit is like happening so fast, right? And we understand that a lot of people feel that change is uncomfortable and they don't like change. And again, natural emotions that come out of, being pushed out of a place of comfort. But again, the alternative is, if you don't adapt, then you will be not required, useless, rendered, incapable of surviving or thriving in the new shape of the environment that it's taking. And I think, again, that is a state of shifting and pivoting from reflection, from the opportunity to reflect, to take a step back and look at everything around you, what it is that is actually happening, and what direction you need to point yourself in now in order to keep going, to thrive.
Yeah, and I think if anything from this time, that would be one of the best things to take from 100%. Uncertainty right now is like, maybe just stop to think about how you think.
Yeah, because the thing is, again, change is inevitable, right? So you can either embrace it and be proactive about it, or be pushed and forced into it.
Yeah, and also, like, it's never the event of something, it's the meaning you attach to it.
That's right.
So look at the events that are going on around you and be mindful of the meaning that you're attaching to it, because that's going to dictate your mode going forward.
Yeah. Comes back to what you were talking about right at the start with regards to perspective and how we view not only these types of situations, but any situation that's put in front of us.
I truly believe it's everything.
Yes.
Because it dictates your experience.
Yes, that's right.
Does.
Yeah. Righto. I think we covered quite a lot. Did you have anything else to say on the topic?
Nope.
Yeah, righto. I think I think this one can roll on for quite a long time. So we might just cap it there. I'm sure we'll touch different elements of it in the future.
For sure.
Don't want to harp on it anymore because there's plenty of commentary around it around anyway. So yeah, we might leave it there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And where can they find you, Les?
Yeah, you can touch base with me on my website, findingspace.co, and also via Facebook and Instagram, which is at findingspace.co. Send me an email, hit me up a DM, whatever it is, and get in touch. How about you, Shaun?
Best place to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram is Shaun_Coop. So it's SHAUN_COOP. Just send me a message. We can chat there. If you guys have anything you would like us to discuss on the podcast, just feel free to shoot Les or myself a message or an email. And we'd be happy to bring it up, have a good chat around it. And as always, we're just going to ask that if there's anything you found of value here, a little nugget, something you think might help someone else, you think would be cool for them to hear or beneficial for them, just please share this with one other person. That's our little fee that we ask you to pay, I guess, for listening here. We feel that there's always something from our conversations that can apply in different situations to different people. And that's why we have these conversations here and put them out for you guys. Yeah, and also, I guess if you feel compelled to, feel free to leave a review as well on any of the, wherever you're listening to the podcast. I mean, that's also helpful in terms of allowing us to keep going and deliver good content to you guys. And, again, comments about what you liked, what you didn't like, what suggestions on topics that you want us to cover in the future. But yeah, until next time, guys, we'll see you later. See you then.